Told my fiance I never wanted kids from day one. Then his sister had a baby and he started calling me mama and changed his phone wallpaper to me holding the baby, so I left. I've, 26F, always known I didn't want kids. From a young age, even when adults asked me how many kids I wanted, my answer was always none. I didn't even know what child-free meant, but I always was. As I got older, I realized what it was. I just didn't feel that unconditional love that's supposed to come with having children. Could I love a child? What if? I can't be a mother because I don't know what that kind of love feels like. That's how I've spent my whole life. Then I met my fiance, 34M, 2 years ago. He was my first everything, and I finally experienced romantic love. But when it came to kids, I still knew I couldn't do it from the beginning. I told him that having kids was off the table. He said he was fine with that because he never really liked kids, so it wasn't a problem for him. 5 months ago, he proposed, and I said yes. We moved in together, and everything was perfect. We were planning our wedding slowly, no rush. That was until his sister had a baby 2 months ago. My fiance instantly fell in love with his nephew and was there every step of the way. He bathed him, changed him, napped with him. It seemed normal, I guess, so I didn't mind. 3 weeks ago, we went to his sister's house for lunch. My fiance was mowing her lawn when she asked me to watch the baby for a couple of minutes. I tried to refuse, but she looked so down that I agreed. I thought she would just put him in his stroller or something, but she plopped him into my arms and went upstairs. I panicked. I had never held such a small baby before, and I was terrified I might drop him. 5 minutes in, he started crying. At first, it was fine, but then he started screaming at the top of his lungs. How can such a tiny baby be so loud? I was almost in tears myself. I stood up as gently as I could and went outside where my fiance was. I yelled at him to come grab the baby from me. He came over, took a picture of me holding the baby, and instead of taking him from me, he started giving me tips on how to calm him down. He pushed the baby closer to my chest and said, "He really suits you." I was on the verge of a panic attack, my hands trembling. I was even more scared to drop him. I yelled, "If you don't grab him, I'm putting him on the floor." He got angry, called me a bitch, and grabbed the baby. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I took an Uber home. He came home around midnight, showered, and went to sleep on the couch. The next morning, he was already gone when I woke up, and he didn't come home until 3 a.m. I told him we needed to talk, but he just said, "Tomorrow," and went back to the couch. The next day, when I came home from work, he was waiting for me. We sat down, and he apologized for how he reacted, saying he didn't know what got into him. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Me, do you want to have kids now? Him, I don't know. I just love him so much, you know? Me, well, that's normal, isn't it? Him, I guess. But do you really feel that against having kids? You don't even have to get pregnant or give birth, we can adopt. I talked about how scary pregnancy and childbirth were for me, especially because of how hard it was for my mom. She almost died giving birth to me due to complications, and she had to have an emergency hysterectomy. Me, that's not the only reason, and you know that. You know how I feel about not knowing if I could love a kid unconditionally. Him, I know, but you learn to love me, right? You can love a child too. Listen, we don't have to agree on this now. We can get married first, and then revisit it. Please don't shut it down immediately. Then he started to cry and hugged me, so I dropped it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't be a mom. I know myself, and honestly, I felt betrayed by him. I thought I'd eventually start resenting him, but I hoped we could get past this. Then he started doing some strange things. He changed his wallpaper to the picture of me holding the baby. He started calling me mama. He wanted to start having unprotected sex, and he even began touching my belly when he thought I was asleep. I have fertility issues that I've never treated because what was the point? My period is irregular, but mostly pain-free, so I never bothered to do anything about it. But when he suggested I go to the doctor to see what's going on with it, I panicked. It felt like he was trying to get me pregnant, and abortion is still illegal in the country we're living in. So I left. I told him my mom fell in the shower and broke her leg, a lie, and I wanted to stay with her for a couple of days to make sure she was okay. He said that was fine, and I waited for him to go to work. Then I grabbed important documents, some clothes, sentimental things, my dog, and I left. I don't know if what I did was right. I'm starting to doubt myself. Maybe he just wanted me to be healthy. Maybe he was just cuddling me or liked that picture. But I can't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He hasn't realized that I left to never coming back. He just questioned why I took the dog, jokingly. I didn't tell anyone, I just told my mom I missed her. Maybe I should go back and pretend everything's okay, but something about him feels off now and just don't know anymore. I'm sorry if this is all over the place and extremely long. I just can't talk to anyone about this and is eating me alive. I probably left some things out of context, so sorry about that too. Comments where Op has replied. Commenter 1. I think you are right to leave. You are clearly on different pages about children. Railroading you into motherhood is reckless and deceitful and not the foundations you want to build a marriage on. However, I do think you need to own your decision to leave and tell your fiancé that it is over instead of running away. Oop, you're probably right, but I always run away. I can't handle confrontation. I run away instead of moving out like a normal person when I was 18. Does the fiancé know where Oop has left to? Oop, gladly, he was never in my home country. He has a super demanding job, so he doesn't even take vacations, so it's nearly impossible for him to find me. Even if he tries, I'm not even in the capital or near there. Comment or two. We can get married first and then revisit it. He plans to make it harder for you to escape. Tell him your firm stance on no children. My stepmom didn't love me unconditionally and it fucked me up. Even if you would be a good mother, it's so fucked that he forced you to keep holding the baby. His sister too. Oop, I can't blame the sister. She's a single mom and is doing everything on her own. Her birth had some complication and she really is doing the best she can. Update. February 11th, 2025. So, I'm going to try to make this as chronologically accurate and concise as possible. If something is unclear, I'll clarify in the comments. The first thing I did after my last post was get a blood pregnancy test. It was negative. That night, I also spoke to my mom. I wasn't comfortable sharing every single detail, so I left some things out, but she told me she supports me and that I can stay with her for as long as I need. I also talked to my sisters. They admitted they never liked the idea of me dating someone so much older, but they didn't want to push me because they know me. If they did, I'd probably get angry, distance myself, and become even more dependent on him. I apologized for overreacting at everything and assured them that they should never hesitate to tell me if something feels weird or wrong. I called my boss and gave him a more family-friendly version of the story. He was absolutely livid, not only with him but also with me for not telling him sooner. He's like my work dad and was the one who requested I join him. He said he didn't bring me to a foreign country without intending to take care of me. He promised to pull some strings to get me a position at the office in my country since my former position was already filled. He also told me that if I wanted to get my things back I could go back on a Saturday, and he would accompany me. After thinking about it, I decided to go back. It might seem silly, but I had spent a lot of money on K-pop photo cards, albums, mangas, and I didn't want to start my collection from scratch. So, I spent a couple of days with friends and visiting family. Realizing how lonely and isolated I felt in a foreign country. Even though it's not that far from home, I knew I could never leave my family like that again. Even my dog seemed happier, spending every afternoon cuddling with my mom. I also visited my father's grave. I've always hated cemeteries and avoided them, but I needed him in that moment. I went alone, brought fresh flowers, cleaned a little, and just sat there talking to him. I told him none of this would have happened if he hadn't passed away. I cried like a lot, then laughed like a crazy person. I ended up staying for about 3 hours, but it felt so healing. I also went to my mom's gynecologist, and she said it was possible to get a tubal ligation, especially considering my health issues. She warned me it could take about 6 months, but I was okay with the wait, so we started the process. I felt so free after that appointment and just so much happier being home. I didn't even think about my ex until he messaged me asking about my mom. I told him she was doing better and that I'd be back on Saturday. I decided to talk to him face to face, since I was already going back to collect my things. On Friday afternoon, my sister lent me her car, and I drove back. It's almost a 12-hour drive, but with breaks, it took about 14 hours. I went straight to my boss's house, and when I arrived around 9 a.m., he asked me to have breakfast with him and his family. Afterward, he and his son came with me to my ex's house to help pack up my things. I even get some of my favorite plants. They made fun of my taste in music, and we finished in about an hour and a half. Afterward, I went to my ex's sister's house. I needed to know if the whole baby incident had been a setup. I knew she didn't work on Saturdays, so I went to her house. Luckily, she was home and invited me in. We sat in awkward silence for a moment until I asked her, "Me, did your brother ask you to make me hold the baby?" Her, "What? No, why? What even happened that day?" "When I went downstairs, you weren't there, and he said you got sick and had to leave." "Me, what did he tell you exactly?" Her, "He said you had a panic attack because of fertility issues, and holding the baby was triggering." I told him that didn't sound like you, but he said, "How are you supposed to know more about my fiance than I do?" Then he left. Me, "What the actual fuck?" Her, "Yeah, he even said you wanted to babysit and go to the park as a couple with the baby, but I told him he was crazy if he thought I'd let him use my baby like that." He got mad at me and didn't speak to me for a couple of days. Then I laughed and explained what actually happened. She was furious, so mad she started crying. She apologized for leaving me with the baby, and I apologized for saying I was going to put the baby on the floor, clarifying that I wasn't actually going to do that. She said she was genuinely considering going low contact with him because his behavior was creepy, and she feared he might do something to the baby. I decided to tell her I was leaving her brother, and she said she understood. We hugged, and she said she'd miss me. I went back to my boss's house to wait for my ex to get home. I told him to text me when he got off work. I was a nervous wreck. I almost threw up. My boss's wife made me chamomile tea and stayed by my side, rubbing my back. I honestly love that woman. The whole family, really. My boss and his son came with me to his apartment. One thing about my boss, he's a softie, but he's huge. He's 195 centimeters, 6 feet 3 inches, and about 130 kilograms, 286 pounds, and his son is basically a carbon copy of him, so I felt pretty safe. When my ex got home, he smiled at me, but then saw my boss and his son. He asked me what was going on. Me, I'm breaking up with you. You're clearly going through a baby fever phase, and I don't want any part of that. Him, what do you mean, breaking up? We can't break up. We love each other. Me, no. You love the idea of me being pregnant with your child and that's not going to happen. He tried to hug me, but my boss grabbed his shoulder and said, why don't you sit here with me? Him, I can't lose you. I love you. You're my soulmate. I can't live without you. If you leave me, I'll die. I would rather never have kids than lose you. I'll even get a vasectomy, but please stay. What will our families think? You can't just break off the engagement like this. Me, first of all, this isn't a telenovela, so calm down. Second, I never even told my family we were engaged, and I've already told them we broke up. Him, what about the dog? You can't just take her. Me, what dog? The dog I've had since I was 17? That's my dog, and she barely tolerates you. Trust me, she's much happier with my mom. He started sobbing, and tried to speak, but I couldn't understand him. My boss's son couldn't chose a worse moment to laugh and asked, you really didn't tell your family? Me, I just never found the right moment, you know? My ex calmed down a little and said he'd never let me go. He still loved me, blah, blah, blah. I felt a little threatened when he said something like, I'll find you and make you fall in love with me again. I told him, good luck with that, but seriously, we're not in a telenovela. Enough with the drama. I gave him the ring back, and he threw it at me, though it didn't hit me. I said, I hope you find someone who wants kids, but I also hope you get psychological help, and we left. I spent the night at my boss's house, and the next morning, I went back home. I spent the rest of Sunday sleeping because I had a bit of a fever. That's me, the girl who gets emotional fevers. I helped my mom with her business today, and my therapy session is on the 13th. Due to how things went in the office, I'll start again in March. They kind of fired me, to rehired me. Thank you so much for helping me see how crazy this whole situation was. I feel so happy and so light now. I forgot how much I love having my family around. I probably won't update again unless something crazy happens, but yeah, thank you people, especially women. I've Reddit edit to clarify a couple of things. Some people said and even messaged me to tell me I never loved my fiance and I'm a horrible cold person. I did love him and I think I still do. I had a whole script memorized to talk to him about his sister's baby, he wanting unprotected sex, why I ran away but I panicked and forgot everything and decided to just be blunt and direct. I didn't take two men to make fun of him while I broke up with him. That's actually insane. They come with me because I didn't feel safe with my ex alone. People saying I need therapy. I know I already made the appointment, it's on the 13th about the tube ligation. It's nothing confirmed yet, but I'll try to get a bilateral salpingectomy. Someone here actually let me know what that was. I wanted a hysterectomy but that's basically impossible according to my doctor. Some people told me this sounds fake. I wish but no is real. Maybe it's the way I worded or because English is not my first language. But there's that next story. Mom won big money and let her boyfriend stay in my house after she died of cancer. But 4 years later his new girlfriend told me to move out claiming he owned the place. When I was 17 my mom came into money. She tried to keep it quiet but she paid off my dad's debts, bought him a small house, paid off her debts and paid for my sister's college and set up funds for mine. She had a boyfriend at the time and shortly after him and his son who was 7 moved into our new house. Over the next few years mom bought my sister a house after she graduated college. Her boyfriend lived with us and didn't pay anything but he did work. When I was 21 mom got diagnosed with cancer. It wasn't good. She sat me and my sister down and went over exactly how much money there was. She intended to give her current house to me and both me and my sister were left with a large sum at the end of it. She asked if I would allow her boyfriend to stay in the house with his son until he got his own place. I agreed. Before she died she told her boyfriend he would need to look for his own place but had time to save more for that journey. For the last 4 years he has continued to reside in the house with his son. I haven't minded because we get along okay. I pay all the bills but he does buy food for him and his kid. He has dated off and on and mostly kept the women out of this house, which I respected him for. Until his current partner. She's been in my house 3 times and at first besides feeling a little uncomfortable I was okay with her. The last time this past weekend was the point where I lost my shit. I was making myself some lunch when she came walking downstairs. She grabbed a plate and went to grab food out of my pan. I asked her what she thought was doing. She started telling me how I should look for somewhere else to live and leeching off my dead mom's past relationship as an adult was pathetic. I hollered for my mom's old boyfriend. He came down and I told him I didn't know what he current thing thought but I wasn't going to be disrespected in my house. He wouldn't even look me in the eyes as he mumbled something about my mom promising him the house and he was just being kind letting me stay. First, that isn't remotely true. Mom pulled him and I together after she asked if he could stay to set expectations. My mom met him shortly before she won the money and told him and us girls that she had no intention of leaving him money. She did set aside a fund for his son for college when he gets there but he cannot touch it, only his son can. He has lived in this house almost 8 years without paying a dime. He should have plenty of money and if he doesn't that's on him. I told him he had 30 days to leave. I wasn't going to house someone who would lie and disrespect me in my house. He left that night with his son, but his ex-wife called to tell me I am cruel and an off for her son losing his house. He is here every other week. I really feel like my mom didn't expect him to still be here, but my sister said she feels like I am breaking my promise to my mom, and that made me feel like maybe I am the Update 1, February 1st, 2025. I do want to take a moment to address some things I saw in the comment. 1. There are trusts set up and neither me nor my sister has full access to the money left us. This was done both because my sister and I were in our early 20s when my mom died, and she wanted to make sure we had some stability before we had access and to protect us from people who may try to take advantage, especially while we were grieving. 2. I have a lawyer. He has already informed me legally to my area what eviction laws are, and my mom's former boyfriend will be served with formal eviction papers just to cover myself even after today. So to the update, my dad came over, decided not to have my boyfriend over since he doesn't know about the money side, and I wasn't trying to have the boyfriend out the situation this morning, and brought along my cousin. For easier telling, I'm going to call mom's former boyfriend Chuck. Chuck showed up about 10 a.m. my time and talked to my dad, then asked if he could have a couple of minutes alone with me. Dad nodded, so my cousin and him went into the kitchen and Chuck and I sat in the living room. I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to go as it had, but I'm glad it did. Chuck started with an apology. I don't remember all of the words said, but the basics were he missed my mom. He has been lonely but not alone, thanks to me and his son. He was sorry for what had happened, that he got caught up in lust and let someone else fill his head with ideas, and that he owned up to his mistakes and should have never put up with someone who would disrespect me or my mom's memory. He tried to hand me a cashier's check for $15,000. He said it wasn't much, but he wanted me to know he appreciated me and living with me, and that he wanted to pay back some of what he owed. I refused the check, both in part because I never wanted his money, but I also don't want to give any possible legal leg for him to stand on if this is somehow him trying to stay. I told him the first part and told him to put it towards a house. He told me he is living with his sister but is going to look at houses with a realtor next week. He did say his son is asking about our next hangout date and said both me and my sister are welcome to arrange time with him. After all of that, my dad and cousin helped him get all the stuff out of the house that he owned. He had brought a U-Haul, and he gave me back my house keys. He apologized again and left. Not what I expected. But it went really well, and I feel a lot less like I let my mom down. Update 2, February 11th, 2025. This is probably going to be my last update unless something unexpected happens, but I thought I would just give a quick update on Chuck. So Chuck called me last week and again yesterday. He put an offer on a house and yesterday got accepted. They expected close date as early next month, but I am very proud of him. I know everyone expected more drama, and honestly some of the comments had me worried, but it's been really good. He thanked me a lot for letting him have so much time here, offered me some money one more time for his time here, which I again declined, but I did offer to help him move in when the time comes. Moving sucks. He put down almost half for a down payment, so he definitely was saving money during his time here, and I'm glad everything that happened was an encouragement for him to get into a home of his own. I talked to his son yesterday after he got out of school. We are going to play laser tag this weekend with my sister, and he is excited for the new house too.